The Great Gatsby. Many years ago, my father gave me some advice, which I have always remembered. When you're tempted to judge someone, try to remember that many people have not had the same opportunity as yourself. He didn't elaborate any further. He didn't have to. I knew exactly what he meant. We had an unspoken understanding of one another. Because of his advice, I have always erred on the side of caution. This, in turn, caused me to become known as a non-judgmental sort of character who was then subjected to the mundane conversation of a good number of individuals. I was also an unfairly labeled a politician, and whenever I felt that another was going to confine me, I would often pretend to be asleep or just focus my attention elsewhere. Despite my privileged ability to understanding how to be a young man and my passion about shortcoming, I realized that there are limits. I reached the point where I just wanted everyone with the same consistent value. I didn't care what those values were founded upon. I just wanted to be free of the burden being forced to deal into the mind to heart to others. Gatsby stood for everything I despise in life. Yes, he is the only thing his man's private feelings and emotion interested me. Gatsby was a remarkable man. He was filled with such a promise of hope that I had never seen in anyone before. He possessed an amazing fester for romance, and I am sure I will never find such enthusiasm in anyone again. Gatsby achieved a great success in his life, but it was the road he took to the success that destroyed them. I heard that my family descended from dukes of good luck, but it was my grandfather's brother who started my family business. He started a wholesale hardware business in Midwestern city. It has been my family for 3 generations, and my father still runs it today. People often comment that I look like my great uncle, but I can only compare myself a single part of him and change on my father's office. After graduating in New Haven in 1950, I fought a great war. Despite the violence many experienced during the war, I enjoyed myself, and it made it very difficult for me to settle back into the life Middle West. Because this feeling, I decided to head east. I thought that I might try my hand in the burn business. All the people I knew were doing the same thing. I thought that I too might as well try and prosper dealing with burn. My family talked it over. They were concerned and very cautious, but eventually they all agreed. My father agreed to support me financially for a year until I'm on my feet. After a lot of planning and several delays, I eventually came east in the year 1922. For me, it was going to be a permanent move. As soon as I arrived, I set about finding some accommodation. I was using to have a large amount of space with lots of trees. So when another young man at the office suggested we share a house, I immediately agreed. He found a house to rent for $80 a month, but then he suddenly transferred to Washington. I moved into house alone with the dog, which ran off a few days later. I bought an old Dodge and hired a Finnish woman to cook and clean for me. I felt like an only outsider for a while until a stranger stopped me in the street. He asked, "How do I get to West Egg Village?" I suddenly felt like one of the locals as I got interested in destination. A new feeling of being comfortable in my surroundings overcame me. I settled down to begin my main task reading. I bought several volumes on finance, banking, and other subjects related to my chosen field of work. I had the intention of free living at college days when I had been very well read. I even recognized a good number of the total for the year new. The neighborhood which I trained, I found myself living one of the most tourist communities in North America. On a very narrow island just east of New York, there are two very interesting land formations. They lie approximately 20 miles from the city. These are called DX. They are completely identical and are only separated by a bay. They sit in what is known as Long Island Sand. Despite being completely identical in the shape and size, these two eggs share many differences. I live on the west egg. This is the last fashionable side, where residents are part of New Ridge. These people have only recently become wealthy and this egg are still trying to build up their identities in the upper crowd. My house is right at the end egg. It is located between two very large houses. These houses are usually rented this summer in the area of $12,000 to $15,000 for a season. The house surrounds a massive structure. It looks a lot like Hotel de Ville in Normandy. It was a fairly new house, and the idea was just under cover. At the back, there was a marble swimming pool, and behind it were a 40-acre garden lawn. It was in this house that Gatsby resided. Of course, I didn't know at that point, compared his magnificent house to what I was living in looked like a shambles. However, I was able to overlook this point. I had a magnificent view of Long Island Sound. I could partly into my neighbor's backyard, and yet was loving shoulder in a millionaire. All this for the bargain price only $80 a month. On a beautiful evening, I found myself driving over Christie Bay to the Buchanan's house. They lived on the East Egg. Across the bay, I could see the mansions which the lights were sparkling on the water. It was quite a magnificent sight. Tom Buchanan lived on East Egg with his wife Daisy, who was my second cousin. I didn't know them very well, although I have attended college with Tom. After I got back from the war, I spent a couple of days with them in Chicago. Tom was a very impressed man. Back in college in New Haven, Tom had been one of the most successful and powerful college football players. He excelled so greatly this year 21 that every achievement he made after almost seemed like a disappointment. He also came from an extremely wealthy family, and he always lived an extravagant life. After marrying, Tom and Daisy lived a very careful life. They traveled here and there, wherever their rich people came polo. It was quite surprising when they finally decided to come and settle in the East. During a telephone conversation with Daisy, she told me that they would live permanently in the East. I found it difficult to believe because I could not imagine Tom being happy in one place. He had lived this past few years searching of something to replace the exit to be traumatic for a whole year. The evening I drove to Tom and Daisy Hall was quite warm and very windy. When I arrived at their house, I was really taken aback. Tom was very wealthy, but I could not imagine the extravagant house where I drew up the evening. It was a lovely red and white Georgian colonial mansion, full of over a quarter mile in front of it, lovely gardens and brick walks way down to the beach. It was covered in vine, and at the front there was a large French window. They all wide open to capture the afternoon. I pulled up the entrance, and Tom is standing atop of the veranda. He was still in his riding clothes and he stood his legs apart. He had it since our college day, but he did not listen to inside and strength. Under his riding clothes, I could see his powerful muscles move. He was about 30 years of age. His always fair, his eyes still glowed the confidence arrogance. His voice was deep and resonating. Whenever he spoke, his voice always conveyed contempt. Discourse more than just a few people had him. We were never very close in college, but despite that, I always got the impression he wanted me as more than an acquaintance. We stood on his veranda for some time. Looking around him, he said, "This is a very nice place here." He took my arm and turned me around. We stood looking out of the ground. He looked out over the garden, which included an Italian garden, half an acre rose garden. All this is belonged to Oilman, the man, Tom told me. "Why don't you go inside now? Why don't you go inside now? Why don't you go inside now?" Tom took me through the front entrance and into a high hallway. This hallway led to a bright room lined the French window. This window was open. There was trimmed wide contrast with the immaculate lawn. It seemed to make it all the way to window. The wind was still quite strong, and some curtains were fluffing over the wind the other end of the room. I looked around and noticed that the only thing wind was not affecting the last couch. Two women were sitting at the end of it, and skirts were also fluffing around. They were dressed in white, and they looked like a balloon that mercilessly being tossed around by the wind. I stood there watching everything being blown around until the thundering sound of Tom closing window. The trap wind is forced to stop in menace, and finally, everything in the room became calm. I was now able to examine two women more carefully. I had not met the younger of the two. She was completely stretched out on her end of the couch. She was completely still, and with her chin propped up through, gave no hint that she is seen me. I was taken aback by her inattention, and I mumbled our apology for disturbing me. Days were the other woman on her couch. She laughed a little and ran forward. I laughed a little too and came further into the room. "I'm so thrilled to see you," she explained. She came over to me and gave another little charming laugh. She took my hand and looked at my face, giving me the feeling that there was no one else around she would rather see. She whispered to me very quietly that the family name of the girl behind her was Baker. Daisy was like known for whispering things quietly. I even been told she did it because she wanted people to lean in towards her. I looked behind Daisy and I saw Miss Baker nod her head and Gridman ever so slightly. Again, having felt her disturbed, I mumbled an apology. I looked at Daisy again, and she started to ask me questions. She radioed that night, but she had a sad loveliness about her. Her eyes sparkled, and she spoke in an excited way that man could never forget. Her voice sang and compelled men to listen. In an unspoken tone, her voice hinted at exciting things that she had experienced, and suggested that more excitement was on the horizon. I stopped off in Chicago for a while before I came east, I told her. All of your friends and family asked me to send their love to you. Did they miss me? She cried. Of course they do. Everyone is mourning. Everyone painted the left wheel on the back of their car black as sound of mourning. You should hear them crying or feel on the North Shore too, I said. Tom, let's go back there. We should go there tomorrow. Would you like to see the baby? She asked me. Of course, I'd love to see her, I said. She's sleeping at the moment. She's 3. Have you ever seen her? She asked. No, not once. Tom, who seemed bored by the conversation, came over and pressed a hand on my shoulder. So, what are you going to need? What are you going to need? I'm going to be working with Bones. Which company? He asked. I told him. He said, I've never heard of them. I was offended by this, so I said, well, if you stay in East for any period of time, you will certainly hear of them. We'll soon stay in East now, Tom said. As he spoke, he looked over his Daisy, waiting for her reaction. You'd be a stupid one to living anywhere else. Absolutely. It was Miss Baker who said that. She has not said anything the whole time I was there, and her contribution to the conversation took me quite by surprise. The suddenness of common surprise to her because she yawned, got up and said, I don't know how long I've been lying on the couch. Don't blame me, said Daisy. I've been trying to get you out so we could go to New York for afternoon. Just then, serving came out with a tray of full cocktail. No, thank you, said Miss Baker. I'm in training. Tom was surprised by this. You are? I can't believe that you ever get anything done. He took a drink and emptied it as if it were a mouthful of water. I looked at Miss Baker, wondered what it was that she needed to get done. She was a very attractive girl. She was very petite, with very good posture. She tended through her shoulders back. She had gray eyes. She looked at me curiously. I suddenly realized that I had seen her before. I understand you live in West Egg, she says. There was an undertone of disapproval in her voice. I know one person there. I haven't met anyone there yet, I said. You must know Gatsby, she said. Daisy interrupted us at that point. Gatsby? What Gatsby? She demanded. Dinner was announced before I got the chance to say he was my neighbor. Tom took my arm and pushed me through to while dinner was being served. The two of us walked ahead of us and we went out onto the veranda. The sun was setting and 4 candles flickered on the table. Of course, the wind had completely eased by this time. We don't need candles yet. Come in to Daisy, who put them out immediately. Did you know that it will be the longest day of the year in about 2 weeks? She asked. I always wait for the longest day of the year and miss it. Who is blending something on that day? Said Miss Baker, yawning. Good idea. What shall we do? Daisy asked. I was about to say something, but then Daisy quickly said, Look, I hurt my finger. You looked at her finger, which is black and blue. You did it, Tom, she accused. I know it was an accident, but you still did it. That's my punishment from Maren Hughes hurting physical sample of a, even if you meant jokingly, I hate that word hugging, said Tom. Hawkins, exclaimed Daisy. Exclaimed Daisy. Hawkins. Hawkins. Exclaimed Daisy. Let's get move next step. That's why there is some music. The Great Gatsby. The Great Gatsby. The Great Gatsby. Chapter 2. Rumors Mysteries. The Rumors Mysteries. Chapter 2. Chapter 2. The Great Gatsby. What will really for dinner be served? Daisy and Miss Baker would occasionally lapse into their own private conversation. Although except the presence of Tommy, they did little to entertain us, and then Harry responded to our effort to entertain them. They seemed casual except the evening would come and close. This was quite different to attitudes in the West. Evenings were usually harassed with the dread of the evening ever coming to an end. I feel quiet and civilized around you, Daisy, I said to her. I wish you'd talk about more everyday topic. Don't believe Daisy even got a chance to respond. Civilization just falling apart, Tom said bluffly. Have you ever heard of Arthur Gardner? He wrote a book titled The Rise of Colored Empire. Tom spoke quite roughly, which surprised me. No, I haven't read it, I told him. You should. The writer based the whole book on science. He says the white race must be careful or will be taken over by all the other races. Tom says. Tom likes to read a lot of books about the philosophical subject. It's a very deep, Daisy said. Tom looked at Daisy with short nose and said, No, this book is scientific. The writer is always taught. He clearly demonstrates how it is possible or other races to really dominate. We have to fight to maintain control without the beat them in submission. Daisy whispered to me in weeks at the same time. Tom continued to talk. We are having no background. You do, Nick? I will. Miss Baker doesn't, so do Daisy. It is Western civilization, crazy science and art. It all work together to make civilization. I looked at Tom and thought that he looked a bit pathetic. He was trying so hard to replace the former complacency. I was in the middle of my thought when a telephone rang. Rebecca went inside to answer it. Daisy took the opportunity to whisper something to me. I want to tell you a secret. It's about the bottle of Nom. Do you want to hear about it? She asked. It's the very reason why I came to visit, I said. He used to be a silver purser for some wealthy New York. They had a silver service to 200 people. It was job to polish to silver, but it eventually affected his nose. Finally, it had to give up his job. I looked at Daisy and I noticed that her face was glowing. Her delicate voice almost forced me to lean in towards her. The buckler reappeared with something in Tom's ear. The expression on Tom's face changed. He frowned and got up without saying a word. Daisy almost seemed to become animated by Tom's perch on the table. She leaned closer to me and said, Nick, it's wonderful to have you at my table. It almost resembles a rose. Doesn't he almost look like a rose? She asked Miss Baker. I felt that this was a very strange thing for Daisy to say. I don't look anything like Rose. I know that she was only trying to make me feel comfortable with her warmth and sincerity. A few moments later, she placed the neck on the table, excused herself, and went inside. Miss Baker and I briefly looked at each other. I almost said something when she quickly said, "Sss." We listened closely and could hear voices mumbling in one of the rooms inside. Miss Baker was closer so that he could hear better. We can continue to listen. At one point, we could understand most of what is being said, but then it became incoherent. I decided to try and make some conversation, so I said, "You mentioned Mr. Gatsby earlier. He happened to be my neighbor." "Shh, I want to hear what they say," Miss Baker said. "Is it in your interest?" I asked. "You don't know?" she asked, looking very surprised. "I thought everyone knew." "I don't know anything," I told her. "Really? Tom has another woman in New York," she told me. I stared her and questioned. "Another woman?" She nodded her head. "She doesn't even have the manners not to call out dinner time," remarked Miss Baker. Miss Baker had only just finished speaking and Tom and Daisy returned to dinner table. "Sorry for leaving you," apologized Daisy. She sat down, looked at Miss Baker and then at me. Then she said, "I went outside for a minute. It's such a lovely evening. It's all very romantic. I think there's a nightingale on the run at the moment." "Tom isn't romantic." "It's very romantic," he replied. He turned to me and said, "Why don't I take you down the stable after dinner if there's still some light?" At that moment, the telephone rang. Daisy shook her head at Tom and the thought of stable was forgotten. It was a very uncomfortable moment. I remembered the candle had been lit again and I looked at everyone about looking at Tom and Daisy. Even Miss Baker, who had never seen it about her, would not have been able to ignore the existence of the uninvited fifth guest that evening. Dinner finally came to end, and Tom, Miss Baker walked slowly back into the house. Daisy and I walked around outside the house along a disconnected veranda. We stopped the porch in the front and we ended up sitting on the wicker seat. Daisy leaned forward, putting her chin in hand like she was pondering some great mystery. I knew that her feeling must be being a tumor, so I decided to ask her some question about her young daughter. She suddenly spoke, however. "We are cousins. We don't even know each other very well. Why didn't you come to my wedding?" she asked. "I was overseas because of war," I said. "I suppose I've been having a terrible time. I've become very skeptical about absolutely everything," she told me. I could certainly understand why she felt that way. I waited for her to continue to speak, but she didn't. I made another attempt at asking her about little girl. "She does everything every other child does, I suppose. She talks now." "I guess she is everything too," I said. "Yes, he does," Daisy told me. "Can you imagine what I said when she was born? Do you want me to tell you? "Yes, please tell me," I said. "It will show you how cynical I am about everything in life now. I have no idea of where Tom was when she was born. She was only about an hour only when I woke up. I asked the nurse whether my child was a boy or a girl, and she told me it was a girl. It was a girl. I started to cry. Then, well, I said, I have a daughter. I hope she's really quite a stupid fool. That's the best thing for a woman to be in this world. I hope she's the gorgeous fool. Everything Elijah dreadful, Daisy said. I know that everyone feels the same way. People in the bounce country do anyway. I've been to all of them, and everyone feels the same way about things I do. I've seen everything and done everything. She let her laugh feel the reason. God, I dare say to be sophisticated. I'm so sophisticated. At that, she starts speaking, and it's only then I realized she was being sarcastic. I suddenly felt uncomfortable, and that the evening had a plan to extort some sympathetic feelings from me. I looked at her, and suddenly a sneer appeared on her face. It was like she was emphasizing her association to a secret organization something. Yesterday I read until 38 page. Only I like this sentence. You make me feel uncivilized, Daisy. But that meaning is not good, so just skip. And before his family marvelous worthy, 18 pages, I guess. I'm looking for 18 pages in his family were immensely worthy. Your family were immensely worthy. Immensely worthy. You make me feel uncivilized, Daisy. I confessed on my second glass of crock, but rather impressive claret. Can't you talk about crop or something? I meant nothing in particular by this remark, but it was taken up in an unexpected way. Civilization's going into pieces, broke out Tom violently. I've gotten to be a terrible pessimist about things. Have you read The Rise of the Colored Empire by this man, Gardner? Why, no, I answered, rather surprised by his tone. Well, it's a fine book, and everybody ought to read it. The idea is, if we don't look out, the wild race will be utterly submerged. It's all scientific suffer. It's been proved. Tom's getting very profound, said Daisy, with an expression of unsouthful sadness. He reads deep book with long word in them. Or was that word? These books are all scientific, insist Tom, glancing at her impatiently. This fellow has worked out the whole thing. It's up to us. The ball is in our coat. You make the call. We make the call. Who are the dominant race? To watch out, or these other races will have control over things. We've got to beat them down, whispered Daisy, winking forcefully toward the fervent sun. You ought to live in California, began Miss Baker, but Tom interrupted her by shifting heavily in his chair. This idea is that we're Nordics. I am, and you are, and after an infinitesimal hesitation, he included Daisy with a slight nod, and she winked at me again. And we've produced all the things that go to make civilization. Oh, science and art and all that. Do you see? There was something pathetic in his concentration, as if his complacency more acute than of old was not enough to him anymore, when almost immediately the telephone rang inside, and the butler left the pouch. Daisy seized opened the momentary interruption, and Lind told me, I will tell you a family secret, she whispered enthusiastically. It's about the bottler's nose. Do you want to hear about the bottler's nose? That's why I came over tonight. Well, he wasn't always a butler. He used to be the silver polisher for some people in New York that had a silver service for 200 people. He had to polish it from morning till night until finally it began to affect his nose. Things went from bad to worse, suggested Miss Baker. Yes, things went from bad to worse until finally he had to give up his position. For a moment, the last sunshine fell. This romantic affection upon her glowing face. Her voice compelled me forward, breathless, as I listened. Then the glow faded. Its light deserting her with lingering regret, like children leaving a pleasant street at dusk. The butler came back and murmured something close to Tom's ear. Whereupon folded, pushed back his chair, and without a word went inside, as if his obsess quickened something within her. Daisy leant forward again, her voice glowing and singing. "I love to see you at my table, Nick. You remind me of a rose, an absolute rose, doesn't he?" She turned to Miss Baker for confirmation. "An absolute rose?" This was untrue. "I'm not even faintly like a rose." She was only enterprising, but a stealing warmth flowed from her, as if her heart was trying to come out to you, concealed in one of those breathless, swirling words. Then suddenly she threw her napkin on the table and excused herself and went into the house. Miss Baker and I exchanged a sharp glance, consequently devoid of meaning. I was about to speak when she sat up outwardly and said in a warning voice, a subdued, impatient murmur was audible in the room beyond, and Miss Baker leaned forward, unashamed, trying to hear. The murmur tumbled on the verge of coherence sank down. Mentioned exactly, and then kissed altogether. "This Miss Gatsby you spoke of is my neighbor," I began. "Don't talk. I want to hear what happened." "Is something happening?" I inquired innocently. "You mean to say you don't know?" said Miss Baker, honestly surprised. "I thought everybody knew." "I don't." "Why?" she says honestly. "Tom's got some woman in New York." "Got some woman?" I repeated blankly. Miss Blakely nodded. "She might have the decency not to telephone him at dinner time, don't you think?" Almost before I had grasped her meaning, there was the flutter was dressed, and the church of leather boots, and Tom and Daisy were back at the table. "It couldn't be helped," cried Daisy with tense gaiety. She sat down, glanced searchingly at Miss Baker and then at me, and continued, "I looked outdoors for a minute, and it's very romantic outdoors. There is a bird on the lawn that I think must be a nightingale came over on the crowd or White Star Line. He's singing away. Her voice sang. It's romantic, isn't it, Tom? It's beautiful, isn't it? It sure is. Very romantic, he said, and then, miserably to me, if it's light enough after dinner, I want to take you down to the stable. The telephone rang inside. Startlingly, and as Daisy shocked her ear decisively at Tom and subject of the stables, in fact, all subjects vanished into air. Among the broken fragments of the last 5 minutes at table, I remember the candles being lit again pointlessly, and I was conscious of wanting to look squarely at everyone, and yet to avoid all eyes. I couldn't guess what Daisy and Tom were thinking, but it doubled if I even Miss Baker, who seems to have mastered a certain hardly skepticism, was able utterly to put this fifth guest's shrill metallic urgency out of mind. To the certain temperament, the situation might have seemed intriguing. My own instinct was to telephone immediately for the police. The horses, needless to say, will not mentioned again. Tom and Miss Baker, with several feet of twilight between them, strolled back into the library as if to a vigil beside a perfectly tangible body, while trying to look pleasantly interested and a little deaf, followed Daisy around the chain of connecting verandas to the porch in front. In its deep gloom, we sat down side by side on a wicker settee. Daisy took her face in her hand as if feeling its lovely shape, and her eyes moved gradually out into the velvet dusk. I saw the turbulent emotion possessed her, so I asked what I thought would be some sedative questions about her little girl. We don't know each other very well, Nick, she said suddenly. Even if we are cousins, you didn't come to my wedding. I wasn't back from the war. That's true. She hesitated. Well, I had a very hard time, Nick, and I'm pretty cynical about everything. Evidently, she had reason to be. I waited, but she didn't say any more, and after a moment I returned rather feebly to the subject of her daughter. I suppose she talked and ate and everything. Oh, yes. She looked at me absently. Listen, Nick, let me tell you what I said when she was born. Would you like to hear? Very much. It will show you how I've gotten to feel about things. Well, she was less than an hour old, and Tom was God knows where. I woke up out of the ether with an utterly abandoned feeling and asked the nurse right away if it was a boy or a girl. She told me it was a girl, so I turned my head away and wept. All right, I said. I'm glad it's a girl and I hope she'll be a fool. That's the best thing a girl can be in this world, a beautiful little fool. You see, I think everything's terrible anyhow. She went on a convinced way. Everybody thinks so. The most evidenced people, and I know. I've been everywhere and seen everything and done everything. Her eyes flashed around her in the defiant way, rather like Tom's, and she laughed with thrilling scorn. Sophisticated. God, I'm sophisticated. The instant her voice broke off, ceasing to compel my attention, my brief, I felt the basic insistently of what she had said. It made me uneasy as thought the whole evening had been a trick of some sort to exact a contributory emotion from me. I waited, and sure enough, in a moment, she looked at me with an absolute smirk on her lovely face, as if she had assented her membership in a rather distinguished secret society to which she had belonged. Inside, the chrism room brimmed with light. Tom and Miss Baker sat at either end of the long couch, and she read around to him from the Saturday Evening Post the words morose and uninflected, nodding together in a soothing truth. The lamplight, bright on his boots and dull on the autumn leaf yellow of her hair, glinted along the paper as she turned a page with a flutter of slender muscles in her arms. When we came in, she held a slant for a moment with a left hand. To be continued, she said, tossing the magazine on the table. In our very next issue. Her body asserted itself with a restless movement over her knee, and she stood up. 10 o'clock, she remarked apparently finding the time on the ceiling. Time for this good girl to go to bed. Jordan's going to play in the tournament tomorrow, explained Daisy over at Westchester. Oh, you're Jonathan Baker. I knew now I knew now why her face was familiar. Its pleasing, contemptuous expression had looked out at me from many photography pictures of a sporting life at Asheville and Hot Springs and Palm Beach. I had heard some story of her too, a critical, unpleasant story, but what it was I had forgotten long ago. Good night, she said softly. Woke me at 8, won't you? If you will get up, I will. Good night, Mr. Carraway. See ya, man. Of course you will, confirmed Daisy. In fact, I think I will arrange your marriage. Come over often, Nick, and I will sort of fooling you together, lock you up or accidentally in my linen closet and push you out to sea in a boat and all that sort of thing. Good night, called Miss Baker from the stairs. I haven't heard a word. She's a nice girl, said Tom after a moment. They outing to let her run around the country this way. Who out this too? Inquired Daisy coldly. Her family? Her family is one aunt about 100 years old. Besides, Nick's going to look after her, don't you, Nick? She's going to spend lots of weekend out here this summer. I think the home influence will be very good for her. Daisy and Tom looked at each other for a moment in silence. Is she from New York? I asked quickly. From Russellville. Our white girlhood was passed together. They're our beautiful one. Did you give Nick a little hurt or to her talk on the veranda? Demanded Tom suddenly. Did I? She asked. She looked at me. I can't seem to remember, but I think we talked about the Nordic race. Yes, I'm sure we did. It sort of crept up on us, and first thing you know, don't believe everything you hear, Nick. He advised me. I said lightly that I had heard nothing at all, and a few minutes later I got up to go home. Dad came to the door with me and stood side by side in a cheerful square of light. As I started my motor, Daisy promptly called, "Wait, I forgot to ask you something, and it's important. We hear you were engaged to a girl out west." "That's right," corroborated Tom kindly. We heard that you were engaged. It's a label. It's a label. I'm too poor. But we heard it insisted Daisy, surprising me by opening up again in a flower-like way. "We heard it from 3 people, so it must be true." Of course I knew that they were referring to, but I wasn't even particularly engulfed the fact that gossip had published that Benny's was one of the reasons I had come east. You can't stop going with an old friend on account of rumors, and on the other hand, I had the intention of being rumors into marriage.